Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we're going to be going over and showing you how to install the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver here on our 2022 Mercedes-Benz GLC. So this is what our trailer hitch is going to look like installed on our vehicle, and as we can see here, it actually has a hidden cross tube design, meaning the cross tube is actually going to be tucked away back behind the bumper. So this does a couple different things for us. Number one, it's going to provide us with the best overall ground clearance, and it's also going to give us the best looking hitch. Now what we can see has a nice durable black powder coated finish that's going to help protect the hitch from rust and corrosion over time. So one common question we get asked a lot here at eTrailer is in regards to trailer hitch compatibility with vehicles that have the hands-free liftgate. Now we can't show it to you on this particular vehicle because it isn't optioned with this, but if you guys do have that feature, there really shouldn't be any interference issues with your hitch. Now keep in mind you will have to place your foot on either side of the receiver tube opening, but it should still be functional. So adding a trailer hitch to your GLC, it's going to be an excellent option because it's going to make your vehicle that much more versatile. Now we can obviously use a trailer hitch for towing, but let's say we wanted to hit the trails or free up some space inside the vehicle for those long road trips with us and the family. We could easily attach either a hitch mounted bike rack or hitch mounted cargo carrier. So in regards to towing, our trailer hitch is going to provide us with a 6,000 pound gross trailer weight rating. That's the amount we can pull outward on a receiver. It also has a 900 pound tongue weight rating. That's going to be the downward force on the receiver. Now keep in mind these capacities are for the hitch only, which is tested separately with the vehicle. Therefore you do need to verify your vehicle's towing capacity in your owner's manual and abide by the lower of the two rated components, whether that's the hitch or the vehicle. So this hitch here has a class 3 rating with a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening. Now there's a couple different sizes of the receiver tube openings. The 2" is going to be the most common, therefore the most widely compatible with all those hitch mounted accessories you want to use, such as bike racks and cargo carriers. So on the side of the receiver tube, we're going to have a 5/8" diameter hitch pin hole. It's going to work great with our 5/8" diameter hitch pin and clip. Keep in mind this doesn't actually come with the trailer hitch, and the reason for that is a lot of your accessories are actually going to come with their own, so you shouldn't need to worry about buying this separately. But if you do need one, we have plenty of options here at eTrailer. And then on the bottom of our receiver tube, we have our safety chain loops. You can see there, those work great with those Clevis style hooks, and they'll also work with the S-type as well. So now we've got a couple measurements for you guys here. They're going to help you when you're selecting your hitch mounted accessories. The first one is the distance from the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening. You're looking at about 12 3/4 inches, and that's going to be useful when you're selecting a ball mount. That way you can make sure you get the correct rise and drop to tow your trailer level. And then we have the distance from the center of the hitch pin hole to the outside edge of the bumper. That'd be useful when you're selecting your folding accessories. That way you can make sure that while they're in the stowed position, they don't contact the vehicle. And for this particular one, you're looking at about 4.5 inches. So in regards to installation, this one really isn't terrible to get on. You guys are going to see me removing a part of the bumper fascia, and that may seem like a daunting task, but it's actually really not that bad. There's a couple modifications that we have to do, such as trimming for the receiver tube, but nothing too extensive. Mostly basic tools are going to be required. You don't have to do this in the air. You can certainly just do it on the ground just fine. Now there is one thing you're going to need you may not have, that's a torque wrench. You can actually rent this for free from most local auto parts stores. But with that being said, give yourselves around 1 to 3 hours depending on your experience level. We'll go ahead and walk you through the entire process step by step now. So the first step of our installation, we're going to have an exhaust hanger bracket on either side that we need to remove from the frame. So these exhaust hanger brackets are going to be located just behind the bumper. We'll give you a closer view of that in a second. Now there's going to be one bolt holding that bracket in place. Now this bolt is a Torx bolt, but it's not one that just accepts a standard Torx bit. If you want to do things by the book, you'll actually need a reverse Torx bit, but we'll show you a little tip here in a second that you don't actually need one of those. We actually don't even have these in our shop, so chances are you guys don't either. So we can show you a workaround. What we're going to do is you're going to need a 10mm socket, and you can either grab a 12-point 10mm socket, which is what we have here, or you can still get it off with a standard 6-point 10mm socket as well. Now this probably isn't the best method. You just need to be super careful, apply a lot of pressure on that bolt there, and just turn slowly. Don't use an impact, that way we don't round off the heads. But as you'll see in a second, it does still work. So there's a closer look at this bracket, and again, it's just directly behind our bumper, one on either side. We'll go ahead and remove it. Once we get that out, we'll go ahead and give you guys a closer look at that, just so you can see what we were talking about. So now we're going to work our way a little bit further under the vehicle here. You want to locate your differential, and directly beside this we're going to have an exhaust hanger bracket. So we need to remove this from the rubber isolator. In order to do that, we're going to take a spray lubricant, spray that down, and that just helps you remove the hanger a little bit easier. And then we're going to take a pry tool here, and we're going to pry the metal hanger from the rubber isolator. There we go. So now we're going to come to the outside of the vehicle, the lower part of our fascia directly behind our rear tire. So we're going to have some various fasteners here that we need to remove. We're going to start by these two bolts here with a 10mm socket. Next, we're going to move on to these push pin fasteners. There's a couple of these as well. One of them is located on the bottom here. Just take a flathead screwdriver, pry out the center section, and then the bottom part of it should come out along with it. So we got one down here, and there's going to be one sort of tucked in between the fabric liner and the wheel. So now that we've got this side pretty well loose, we'll go ahead and jump to the other side and repeat those same few steps. And now we'll come to either side here. So what we need to do is we need to loosen some of the clips here holding our fender trim on, just a few of them. You don't need to go all the way up here or anything. So we're going to take a trim panel tool, a plastic one preferably. I'm going to sneak it between these two pieces of plastic. I'm just going to pry up, and you should start to hear some of those clips release. So we'll just continue pulling away. Looks like I'm getting hung up in here, so I'm just going to take your tool, try to sneak them between there. There we go. So I'd say about here is good for now, and again, we need to do it on both sides. So next we're going to take an 8mm socket, and we're going to be removing several nuts holding the heat shield up on the vehicle. So they're above the muffler here, a little bit hard to get to, so just take your time. But again, we have several of them holding them up. We need to remove them all because we're actually going to be trimming this heat shield. So now that we have all of our fasteners removed, we should just be able to pull the heat shield down. So now I can already see it's probably going to be a little tricky to remove here, so you may just need to sort of maneuver the exhaust out of the way a little bit. But there we go. So now that we have that heat shield off, we do need to trim it. So what we're going to do is you're going to find this little standoff tab here. This is going to be the side we need to trim on. So we're going to use this as our center point. We're going to measure out a little bit on each side there according to your instructions, and we're going to measure down a little bit as well. So once we get that area marked out, we're going to take some tin snips here, and we can begin removing that material. Now you want to be very, very careful when you're cutting this stuff because it is pretty sharp. It is kind of tricky to cut as well, so. So there we go. Now that we have that material removed, we can go ahead and just discard this. We'll set this aside to reinstall it later. So next we're going to come back underneath our vehicle here. Now we're going to have a couple bolts holding the bottom fascia tab here to the underside of the vehicle. They are pretty hard to see, but we're going to have one on either side, one over here, and then one over here. You're going to need a 10mm socket along with an extension because they are tucked back up in there pretty deep. So next we're going to come over here on the passenger side, and atop the inside of the bumper fascia we're going to have a connector that we need to unplug. So on this side here you're going to see that little clear locking tab. Use your fingernail to pull that back. Sometimes you can't use your fingernail, sometimes it's on there too much and you just have to use a little pry tool, which I think is what we're going to end up having to do because it's just on there a little too tight. So we'll just come back with a flathead screwdriver, pry that out and away. And then we should just be able to depress that tab there and pull them two apart. There we go. So time for the fun part now. What we're going to do is we're going to be removing the lower section of the fascia here. So in order to do that, there's going to be several clips along the outside edge here where these two panels meet. You actually have to reach up back behind the bumper and depress those clips. So we'll just start at one side, work your way to the other side, you'll depress the clip, and then you'll pull out on the other side. So it is kind of tricky and it's definitely going to take some time, but just stick with it and you should be able to get it out. So if we look inside here behind the fender on the bottom part, where these two panels meet, we're going to have another one of those push pin fasteners that we need to remove. So it's going to be the same thing. We're just going to take a screwdriver, pry that center section up, and then we should be able to pry the bottom up. So if we take a closer look in here, you can kind of see what those clips look like. So basically, from the inside, we're just pressing that tab down and then pulling out simultaneously. So the ones along this outside edge here are going to be much easier to do than the ones that are sort of located back up in there. Because number one, you're not going to be able to see them. You're just going to be feeling for them. And number two, it's much tighter under there. So just work your way along the outside edges there, pushing down those clips and then pulling out. And if you don't have enough grip strength to be able to push those down, you can use some sort of a plastic tool there just to give you a little bit more leverage. So we can go ahead and take this off. Now, what we didn't show you is what we just did because it's so hard to see up there, but you're gonna have a couple more electrical connectors holding the lower part of the fascia up once we release all these clips. So we're gonna have one on either side. These go to the sensors in the bumper. And basically, you just pull back that clear locking tab, then you depress that and pull out. So we have one on either side. And then we also have a clip on the inside here that your wiring harness coming from the vehicle is attached to. So you'll just have to pull it off there. So chances are there's going to be some other little minor clips that you guys may need to undo. It's not exactly straightforward, I guess, from looking at the instructions. There was definitely a couple clips that I didn't see pointed out in there that we had to undo. So just take your time. And I mean, it's really common sense. Like, if the lower part of the fascia isn't coming off because there's a clip holding it on, just pry it off or unplug it. But there is several wires running along the inside here that you're going to need to deal with when you're removing this part of the fascia. So now that we have that lower part of the fascia off, we do need to trim a little bit out of there just to allow for clearance for our receiver tube. So what we're going to do is we're going to find this little point on the outside of this panel here on either side. We're going to measure that, divide by 2 to get your center point, and then you're going to measure out a few inches on either side of that. And then as far as the top line goes, it's pretty much just going to be this little molding here, or this crease where these two panels sort of fold into one another. So go ahead and just mark that material out, and then we'll take a Dremel tool and remove it. So now that I have all that material removed, I'm going to come back with a file here or a razor knife, whatever you want to use to just clean up all those rough edges and burrs. So next we're going to be temporarily removing our bumper beam here. So we're going to take an 18mm deep wall socket, and you're going to have a bolt at the top on either side and then a bolt sort of at the bottom at the rear on either side. So we'll go ahead and remove those now. So now we have the two top ones out, now we have the two at the bottom, and again, these are sort of facing towards the front of the vehicle. Now that we have our 4 nuts removed, we can remove the bumper beam. Now there is some sort of adhesive on the flange there, so we're just going to take a pry tool on each end and just sort of work that loose there. Shouldn't take too much force. So now that we have the bumper beam off, we'll go ahead and take our trailer hitch and set it into position on the vehicle. It should sit over the studs nicely so you don't have to have someone hold it. And then next we'll simply reinstall our bumper beam. So now that we have our two pieces of metal sandwiched together, we'll take our factory hardware and secure them to the vehicle. And now we'll come back and snug all of our fasteners up. And don't forget now to torque all of our fasteners to the specifications listed in your instructions. And now that we have everything torqued down, go ahead and reinstall all the panels and fascia part that we removed previously in the reverse order. And now with everything secure, that's going to do it today for our look and installation of the CURT Trailer Hitch Receiver here on our 2022 Mercedes-Benz GLC.